Good, good.
So BTAS, why do you think it's so celebrated? Why do you think so many people have been anxiously awaiting the HD release?
Well, we were just in an interview and talking about all of us gathering for the first time, and some of us literally since 20 years ago. So explaining that in the midst of it, you're working on it, focused on getting the show done, glad you're working, steady employment, and not until you sort of get out a few years from the show, and then doing Comic Cons and fans coming up that grew up on the show and reminding you that they loved it for all the reasons they loved it, and only then does it make any sense that what we did turned out as good as we had hoped. But when you're in the midst of it, you never know. I mean, you just put your heart and soul in, hopefully, in making a good product, and the fans are the ones that really define when you kind of understand that this is something relevant. Yeah, which is surprising. We were just talking there. My oldest son was 1 year old when we launched the series. He's 26 now, and thinking that all the fans that come up, I'm thinking he couldn't have been a kid, and yet they're the age of my sons, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that it was that long ago, and that's another generation of fans that grew up on it and introduced even their kids to the show. So it's just unique. I mean, it's nothing else I've worked on since, regardless of how high profile they are, has had the reaction response that the Batman series did. So I wish I knew what that magic was, and just to be part of the team was great. Very fortunate.
So how important do you think the 90s charm is to the show's legacy?
Well, because at that time, nothing else took risks that Batman Animated did, and I think that sort of represented the 90s, I guess, genre of animation, and it's carried over because we intended it to be timeless in the design and the portrayal of the character, and somehow that has been unique to the Batman series and carried it through. A lot of other series and shows have come through that have been terrific and really well produced, but this show in particular just seemed to grab not only the core of what Batman is, but it did it in a way that didn't set it in the 90s. It set it in sort of this timeless period. And by nature of that choice, which again we'd love to take credit for, but it was just the way we decided to make it. It's just sort of stood the test of time. It just kept every year, every incarnation of it, harkening back to the original, but sort of evolving. But this one just seemed to hold its own, and just very grateful again to be part of that great time and great team.
For fans who have the series on VHS and DVD, what can they expect with the Blu-ray update aside from better graphics?
I'm going to try and get this right for you because they were just giving me the information lately. But October 16th is the release date. 109 episodes, so it's the entire series. Mask of the Phantasm will be on there, and Sub-Zero. And then there's also a 1-hour documentary that was just filmed in the past couple of months with almost everyone that was part of the show. So that's all going to be included on the Blu-ray. So I think it should be a pretty nice collectible.
Do you know if it's a new transfer, Mask of the Phantasm, or if it's the same one from the
Unfortunately, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
So you said I'm assuming there's all this content that's going to be in the Blu-ray. Are there going to be any episodes that you guys kind of had the idea of doing, got production but never completed?
There may be commentary on that with all the interviews. I wasn't there when all the interviews were done, but everyone was asked to give anecdotes about making of the series and the different episodes, and I'm sure that came up from at least a couple folks that talked about shows that were intended to be made and didn't get see the light of day, things that couldn't be done. One particular script actually came from Tom Ruger's pitch, and he wanted to do the origins of a handgun, and that was going to be the storyline of how it factored into the crime, and that went too far for the network. They didn't even want to consider it, but it was a very dramatic and tasteful sort of story, but they just couldn't find justification for putting a gun as the focus of the story in a kid's cartoon, and yet so many of the other episodes are very dramatic and very dark, dealing with death and violence in a way that was tasteful for the show, but the gun crossed the line, and that one didn't get any further than a pitch. So. Where are you guys all from?
LA.
But different.
Yeah, they're on Screen Geek. different websites.
Fanboy Nation.
Cool.
What is your favorite opportunity that's come from being a part of the project?
Gosh, I think just the longevity of a career. You know, it's certainly a nice part of the resume to talk about the show, and having had the coverage that the show's had, more, going into projects, there's a trust factor that comes with the proof of concept that you managed to get through into a final show. So it gives at least a comfort zone for usually producers and executives at networks that maybe know your work, but they know the show more than your work. So when they tie them together, it certainly just gives you a little bit more credibility in terms of, oh, you're the guy that worked on this show, and suddenly they trust, a little better. But a lot of times those same executives, I don't have much good to say about a lot of them. Only because a lot of times they're more of a hindrance when you're trying to make a show like Batman than they are supportive. So it's always a little frustrating for me to think that everyone can call up the show as an iconic show and something that they love, and they love shows to be like, but when they're asked then to support something radical that you might want to do with a different show, people get cold feet and kind of back away. That's why another reason Batman survived as well as it did, because we were just in this perfect time frame where the network was open to the show. Tim Burton's movie came before, and it allowed it to be dark and moody, and the success of it supported that. So the animation coming in, we kind of snuck under the door a little bit. But now you try and do a show similar, and nothing but resistance, and everyone's worried about getting sued these days. So you got to be very careful about how you handle similar content on different shows. But it's been a definitely a nice foot in the door everywhere you go. There's a credibility to it.
Any chance you give us your 5 favorite episodes?
Oh gosh, 5.
I know it's hard to pick.
No, but there are
episodes or seasons, maybe.
Yeah, and let me try and recall the proper titles. But Heart of Ice, Bruce directed that. Almost got him I worked on, but it's not because I worked on it. But I thought it was a wonderful story. Robin's Reckoning, which won the Emmy for us. Gosh, what else do we have in there? Avatar was really strong. It was Kevin Altieri had directed that. And gosh, what else? There's so many. And On Leather Wings, probably the first. The Maiden Voyage was such a wonderful thing to see the idea come to life in the first episode. So that really stands out as sort of the beginning of it all.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.